So, yeah, so I grew up in Talladega, Alabama, and we didn't really practice Kwanzaa as a youngster coming up. And I do have some slides later. I'll try to share the slides, Kathy, when I get to that. I'm not big on the Zoom technology, so I do have some slides that I'll share. A lot of the information is already all over the internet, but growing up in Alabama, no, we didn't. I was born in 1954, the same year of Brown versus the Board of Education, and started school in 1960. And it was Dr. Malana Karenga who established Kwanzaa uh, celebrations back in 1966. So my son and others probably practice Kwanzaa a lot more frequently than what I have done, but I read a lot on it. My cousin in New York put together a Kanara for me so that I can, at this late stage in my own life, that I can start practicing Kwanzaa every year or observing Kwanzaa as well. What I like to say about myself with Kwanzaa is that it's a practice that should be practiced not just during the holiday. And it's not a religious, I should say that first, it's not a religious observation. It's more cultural, but it is something that we should practice on a daily basis. And you heard some of the different principles, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, highlighted in the different songs that were presented just now. I know some of the songs went kind of fast, but I'll have it on the screen here in a second too. But it is just to bring about unity and uplifting a people who came to this country in very oppressive conditions. So how do we get out of that? How do we lift ourselves up, and how do we go forward in our communities? Your question, Kathy, retired? Okay, so I will tell you a little bit more about myself in terms of how am I retired, and thank you for putting that in the link. The website is still under construction, all right, by God's grace. That's the title of another one of the books that I've done. I have worked probably 40 years in corporate America, and I ended my teaching career just at not even a year ago. I still teach sometimes at one of the local community colleges here in Ohio. They're in Ohio. So I call myself retired, but I've always wanted to be a writer. I've always written all of my life. As a child growing up in Alabama, I would write poetry, I'd write stories. And I worked for years as an adult after college as a technical editor. And I think being an editor at a governmental facility and doing technical editing at that, I wasn't giving myself credit for what my contributions were to those technical reports. So I had to start framing it. Who am I? What am I doing? Well, I'm actually correcting a lot of the writing that has been done. So basically, I'm a co-writer in many cases because you have to completely rewrite it. So at some point, I realized you are a writer. And now I am the writer, now that I've put those jobs away, all of those jobs where I was working for someone else. Now I write for myself. So that's why I say kind of semi or retired. I never received a retirement check from any of the jobs that I have worked with, but I've been out there in the workforce for so long that I consider myself, quote, retired, but I am still writing quite a bit and doing the public speaking, doing a lot of volunteer work in the community. So, and any other specific questions on, I've got that out of the way of who I am, where I've come from, but it's a long story. I do performances. I don't want to really get too much into what my little background is. I'm all over the place. And may I comment before I go directly into the slides with Kwanzaa, is that I do feel the connectedness, and I appreciate the invitation to come in and speak. You being in Canada, me being here, the timing for me to have been in Atlanta. I'm at my son's house for those who see the background here for the Kwanzaa setup. My son and his family practice Kwanzaa every year. So it was interesting when I was given the invitation to talk on Kwanzaa, because at the time that the newspaper article was published that maybe, I don't know if Rachel found it. I wanted to know, well, how did God connect us? Okay. How did God connect us? So we are connected. And that newspaper article might have been, it was before COVID. And the person that's the photograph that's in the paper was actually my husband. So I was president of the Fremont, Ohio NAACP for 3 years there. And I wanted us to have a Kwanzaa celebration. And Kwanzaa is celebrated December 26th to January 1st. So it starts the day after Christmas up to January 1st, up to New Year's Day. But that I thought was good for the community because all communities need to focus on coming together. And again, what I like about this connection with you in Canada, two countries that share the same land space, basically, is that how can we all work together? Because what affects one affects so many others. And so this idea of being connected is very, very important to me. So why don't I do the slides here, and at the end, if there are questions, I will try to address them, and I will speak mostly from what I have learned about Kwanzaa and how I perceive Kwanzaa myself, and how we as a people coming together, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, our different ages, our different experiences, in order to make this world a better place, we really all have to come together. So for Dr. Karenga to come up with this particular celebration that was targeted mostly for African Americans, it is and can be celebrated by everyone. So when you saw the videos with the dancers and singers reciting what those principles are, don't limit it. Don't let the visuals limit it to what somebody else is doing, but it is about what we all can and should be doing together. So we can put the slides up. Let's see, try my skills out, Kathy. So you'll have to share
Great.
do
Oh,
something.
no worries. Here, thank you so much. Here, I made you co-host. And
Okay.
so if you look on the bottom, there should be a little green arrow that says share.
Yes.
Perfect. I don't know how often you do this. So if you click that, and then some of the other documents you have open will kind of show up below, and you just click whichever one you want. And then at the bottom, it says share.
All right. I think this one is probably, let's go with this one. Like I said, I'm using my son's computer here. Let's see if that works.
Looking promising. Hey, there we go.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay, fantastic. So as I said, it's not a holiday, it's a celebration, it's an observance. It's a time we look at Christmas as being so commercialized. Someone talked about that earlier, let's look at, I think it was Nivea, let's look at the different cultural celebrations of all kinds. And that will bring us together, because one part of why we have this separation is that we really don't seem to know one another. I don't think we've taken time, and I look at this in America. I know you said you're from Pennsylvania, right? And in America, we have so many divisions here and there, and it seems like we're moving into more. So by recognizing different backgrounds and different celebrations, I think eventually it's going to bring us all together if we should abide by that. So what was news to me when I started doing this research just for our presentation today was that Dr. Karenga had done this after the uprisings for the Watts, back in California, and in the 60s. We had the 60s were in such upheaval, and that will tie in. I'll mention the book a little bit later, but the 60s were really pretty horrific for the United States because people were fighting for civil rights, women were fighting for rights. There were all kinds of things going on. And Brown versus Board of Education had been put forth in 1954, but many places had not tried to end segregation. So the 60s was just a time where we could see more and more of our divisions, and some people just in America just were not ready for people to come together. So that was news for me. And I knew that Dr. Karenga had created Kwanzaa celebrations, but I did not know it had specifically to bring African Americans together and try to take ownership of our own selves and have that unity and use the creativity that we have to be a better community. But again, let's look at that beyond the scope of what African Americans are doing, but what are we all doing to bring this world back to where God had intended for it to be in the first place? We didn't. So let's see. So it's celebrated worldwide, and the first celebration in Canada was in 1993. Now let's see if I'm going to advance this slide. I'm using his computer again. And I have a little bit of a cold, so I can't seem to get it to get the slide to advance. Just give me 1 second, and I should have him right outside the door. Let's do enter. See if it moves. See, it's tied to the. I'll just talk from the slide. I won't try to advance all of the slides because it's on his one screen, and
Oh, there, where we can see on the left-hand side, it looks like there are the little pictures of the next slide. If you
yeah,
click
but
on
on
those,
his
would that
on
work?
his screen, I can only move the. I wish I had the slides on the. I'm going to text him and have him come back in just a second. I'll talk from the other slides.
Okay.
Is that
No
okay?
worries.
Let's just
Yeah,
me
totally.
give
No
him
worries.
a quick text and have him come in. So that's the second slide is just each day we celebrate using one of the principles. There are 7 principles and there are 7 candles, and you light each candle, a different candle every day to represent the different principles. And the first one is unity, and that's the overall picture of, type this in real quick. I thought I could talk and text at the same time, but I don't think that's gonna do. And so you light a candle for each one of the days and look at what is it that we're celebrating. So unity, of course, especially looking at this Watts uprising of people coming together. And we can apply that also to where we are today. We still have a lot of revolutions, basically. And my son's just walked in. I'll use his, okay, so I can't advance the slides on here on the big screen. So I'm sharing the screen. You can come on screen. This is Vincent Jabari. He's been helping me before, so it only manipulates this computer. Are we able to do that?
So are you not able to, you're sharing the screen, so.
It did something there. Yeah. Okay, so, okay. All right.
Are you good?
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank
I
you.
see it now. Okay, here we are. Okay, thank you all again for your patience. Okay, so each day, as I said, there's a new principle that's practiced. We talked about Umoja, and throughout the song, you heard some of these, and some are a little hard to pronounce. That language is Swahili, all right? Kuji, Galia, self-determination, Ujima, work responsibility, Yajama, cooperative economics, Nia, which is purpose, Kuumba, creativity, and then Imani, faith. And here's going to be another picture of the Kanara that's set up as in terms of a family celebration. So it's this Kanara, the candle holder, is designed. You'll see various designs depending on who is presenting their Kwanzaa celebration. There are a lot of different creative, beautiful, and they're usually wood. It should be like one solid piece of wood that's carved out to hold the candles. It was first done in the design of an Ashanti, that's an African tribe, Ashanti royal throne. The other items in the background for this particular photograph is the food, and all of these symbols represent something. So the corn represents children, and this cup that you see in the center, it has a name. And let me see if I took note of the name of the cup. And when I experienced my very first Kwanzaa, it was probably when I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and the cup was passed. And so this is before, for me, it was before 8, where in the Catholic Church, you take communion and you pass the cup. So in the first Kwanzaa celebration that I had participated in, it was passed from person to person. I'm not sure how it's done now. You know, we're a lot more conscious of germs and all kinds of things. So I'm not sure how it's done. I haven't been to a public celebration where the cup was passed in some time now. And let's see what else. So, oops. All right, so Nguzo Saba, you heard that on there. So that's just the principles themselves. the 7 principles again, and you heard them in the song, but then you have these symbols also on the left of that flyer. And so they, I'm sure, have meanings, like the very one at the bottom is the Ankh, and it represents faith. So a lot to it. And any questions so far in terms of the words, the meanings, or because yes, I'll stop and take some questions down so I don't get too far in.
Sure. My first question is just, it was all of this created by Dr. Maulana Karenga?
Karenga?
Is that his name? Did he create all of it, or did he kind of start and then other folks kind of fleshed out some of it?
He did all of this. He created the principles because the principles were based on what is needed in our community. After that, the riots and what his name is signed in on the bottom of this one. And I can see from looking at the different websites that I went to pull a lot of the material together, there are different interpretations of some of the words, but this is this is the original from him. And it's on the official Kwanzaa website. So, yeah. But I think that he looked at what was needed. You're familiar with what happened in the US after the George Floyd murder and so many other things that have happened. And people a lot of times criticize the communities because they seem to be out of control, of course, when we're reacting to some injustice. And sometimes it plays itself out in self-harm in the community. You know, if Blacks set fire to this or that, they say, well, why are you burning down, tearing down your own community? But it's just the feelings of being oppressed for so long and not having. And I'm sure that in 1965, when that happened, he took some time. I'm just projecting back those years ago. I would have been in 5th grade, but I would think that he looked at what was going on in the community and said, well, first of all, we need unity. And then we also need more determination to be accountable for ourselves. What is it that we can do for ourselves? It says on this flyer, to define ourselves, name ourselves, and create for ourselves and speak for ourselves rather than have others define us, because we're not just that. You know, we're not just reactionary to this. And Ujima, a collective work and responsibility, well, it's not going to happen by itself. And we all need to work together to make whatever changes are. You know, looking again back at 65 and looking at where we are today, of building and maintaining our community and working together. Now, in the 60s, our communities were a lot more unified and we weren't separated because at the same time, we had segregation. Okay, so Black communities were restricted sort of geographically that you would be working together. So once we were integrated more into the larger community, you don't have pretty much all Black sections of town here and there for the most part, okay? And so it'd been easier to say collective work and responsibility of trying to work together to bring and having your own stores, that's one of them, to the cooperative economics, Ujama, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses. So if you're depending on others for where you're getting your goods, your foods, your materials, why are we always depending on someone else when there are things that we could do ourselves? And so again, I'm kind of projecting to how I would think that Dr. Karenga would have seen this, is that what can we do? Why are we taking all of our money to this community if this community is oppressing us? Then Nia, we all need to be aware of our purpose to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. And so I think this is very important because especially for young people who may suffer from low self-esteem because we have been oppressed for so long, we have been told we can't do things for so long, then knowing what your purpose would be, and knowing that you did come from greatness. When the Africans were taken from Africa in 1619, and maybe some even before that, they came from royalty. And a lot of times young people don't know that. We don't have enough Black history that's being taught in the classes, and young people don't know that you came from royalty. And Kuumba, creativity to do always as much as we can in the way that we can do it in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than how we inherited. And that's something we all should be doing, like I said, on a day-to-day basis. We should all want to leave our community better than the way we found it. And we can do that in so many different ways, by reaching out and helping other people, by contributing, and the whole business of climate and waste that we have. I don't think that we think enough about what we do to this earth. We know the Native Americans have always tried to keep things pure and natural, as God had put it, but we are somewhat wasteful. And I don't think that we are conscious enough that what we destroy can be long-term. And then the last one is Imani and faith. And I have these same principles on another slide coming through, so I'm going to advance through those pretty quickly. Because when I look at faith, I look at where would we be without faith? And so here he says, to believe with all our heart in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness, the victory of our struggle. So we have to have faith that where we have come from, things happen for a reason, but we have to have faith to know going forward, things will not always be as they were, that life can be better. So this next one is where I had only just typed up the principles, and I added that slide after these were already typed up. I was just going to go through those one by one, but it's the same ones: unity, umoja, and self-determination, but I just had put the Swahili words on these. So again, to uplift the community and allow for creativity and purpose of being. And then the last one being faith. And I wanted to create just a whole separate slide for that. It's not a religious celebration, but in anything that we do without faith, where would we be? I don't see me being a writer, I've got to have faith that this is the path that God has put me on. I can't say I want to do this and not believe that God will not bring me to that. But I also, in looking in terms of Kwanzaa, and I think about the ancestors' faith, it also takes me back to the slave ships, where the bodies, the people were just put there. A lot died in the Middle Passage. So we have to believe that the ancestors were strong, those who survived the Middle Passage, those who survived that time coming from Africa to America. We have to have that same faith that we will survive. And we have to believe, going into the 21st century and beyond, that life is going to be better, that it cannot go back to older times that were not pleasant times. And this next slide is, I took a lot of these from the internet, so I'll have to give credit to those who did the artwork, a lot of the artwork that's on here, because I just took them off of the internet just to share in this presentation. So this is from the Colorado, the Kuumba Cultural Collective of Southern Colorado. The drums, that's just a part of the big celebration. So there's usually, as a part of your Kwanzaa celebration, it's similar to Juneteenth, and I'll go and look at the heading of this one, but it's always a celebration with music and just love and peace. You talk about that with the interfaith community, wanting peace and justice. It's all about being uplifted in spite of, there's a quote that says we succeed a lot of times in spite of something, not because of it. So in spite of the past that African Americans have come through, we can still celebrate. And I mentioned Juneteenth. I don't know if you're as familiar with Juneteenth as you are with Kwanzaa. Juneteenth is when after the Civil War, when the slaves were freed, there were pockets in America where the slaves were not told that the war was over and President Lincoln had granted slaves to be free. And it didn't happen until 2.5 years after the war was over. And when those in Galveston, Texas, got the word, it took the Army, the US Army, to go there and share with the people that they should be free. Their slave masters had not freed them. Some of them kept them in Texas because they did not want, they moved them to Texas because they did not want them to be freed. And so it's just a celebration very similar to Juneteenth. And I'm saying it is a celebration similar to Juneteenth, and some may ask why. But in spite of all of that past, we must celebrate. And I just love all of the beautiful colors and the drums, the poetry that's shared during this time. Now, I'll stop now and ask another question because I only have one more slide, and I did have a couple of other notes that I was going to share as well. So I'll wait and if there are, is there another question or so?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
First of all, is the word Kwanzaa and the other words, you mentioned Swahili, but I wondered what's the origin of the actual language there. Knowing that President Biden went to Angola, I wondered if that was the language of Angola. Do you know?
No, I don't know. And I should have looked that up. Exactly which country?
I can find that out. Next question is Kwanzaa celebrated anywhere else besides North America?
Yes, it is. In several, well, even in Canada, 1993, and Jamaica, many countries. I'm not sure exactly how many countries in Africa you actually have this celebration, but yes, when I looked at the research, Jamaica was mentioned, and yes.
Oh, so it has African origins, though? When you said it's celebrated in Africa?
I'm sorry, you said does it have African origin?
Yeah, you said it's celebrated in places in Africa? Is that what you said?
Yes, because we're looking at the history of African Americans. We're looking at where did we come from. So Dr. Karenga is looking at the pride of Africa and the red, black, and green flag here. So it has its deep roots in Africa, yes.
Okay, and therefore the colors of the candles are that red, black, and green.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And exactly. So that is the foundation in and of itself is Africa. So the red is, well, this flag in my background, the red is for the blood and the green for the land and Black people. Okay. And I might have some additional notes in my presentation here on the actual symbolism of the flag.
And so when people celebrate this, they very intentionally dress up in African attire?
Well, that's an interesting question. When I came here with my son, I said, I didn't bring my African garb, okay?
Yeah.
I'm only here for the weekend and I brought with a light bag. So many of our cultural events that we, like Juneteenth, I will pull out a dashiki. And so yes, this is the time that you really want to represent Africa itself. Things are colorful, the music is upbeat. Yes, so it definitely has a tie. So this one article that I looked at, the Kwanzaa flag is black, red, and green. Each color symbolizes black, the people, red, the people's struggle. Okay. But in some terms, the red represents the blood. So I guess you could say the blood that was sacrificed. And then green, the people's future. Now, this is just one of the references that I looked at, the people's future that comes from the struggle. So green does kind of inspire prosperity. You know, you think of your grass growing, you think of growth, you think of good things, nothing dying off. So their interpretation for this reference is that it came from the struggle, but what's coming in the future. So,
thank you. That's great. Thank you.
So now I've added a couple of little notes when I was reading and studying this. One question was, why do Black people celebrate Kwanzaa? And I said, per AI, you know, that's the ultimate authoritarian now, is to use artificial intelligence to answer any question that you want. Okay, Kwanzaa is a time of learning, family, and celebration. The week after Christmas, beginning December 26th, families and communities come together to share feasts. And Kwanzaa means first feast. Okay, so usually there is going to be food as a part of this celebration. Same thing with Juneteenth. And I hope I'm not confusing you with the two by me throwing all of this in together. And it's just to honor our ancestors, affirm the bonds between them, and to celebrate African and African-American culture. So it definitely is deeply rooted in Africa. And I don't even have a list, but I would say there are many, many countries that celebrate Kwanzaa. Okay. Now, can others celebrate? And I say, yes, of course. And now, if you are not Native American, we know that we all came from somewhere, if we're not Native American, in some boat to get to America. Some of us will have more exciting memories of our ancestors than others. Some can identify with the tragic Titanic. Some, like myself, might think about the Middle Passage and how the bodies were stacked in filth and waste in the belly of the slave ship. Some are French, Islanders, Italian, and more. If we are not Native American, then we know in God's eye, we are the same. And politically speaking, this quote is very real. We might have all come in separate boats, but we're all in the same boat together. I know you have heard that before, right? We may have come from different walks of life, come in different boats, but where we are today, it's, again, I speak of America, is we are all in the same boat together today. So whatever the problems are, just as Dr. Karenga saw in 1965, whatever the problems are, we really need to be coming together in unity to solve these problems. So that's my take on it. We are in the same boat together. I think that's most of what I have in my notes, but I've been.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. This is amazing. Just learned so much. Thank you. You have one more slide. Did you want to share that slide now, or did you want to hold off?
Nope, I'm going to do that. Thank you. So that's my family. My son who just came in, they've been celebrating Kwanzaa in their home. It's very private. You can have your own personal celebration of Kwanzaa, or you can go to a public place to celebrate within the city. So they dress out. Your question earlier was, do you take on your African garb? Do you represent in the colors? So yes, that's what they've done. And they have sent these out as Christmas cards in the past, but that's my son and his wife and their 4 children. And they're allowing me to use their office and their space. I don't know if I put the camera down, you can see, because they are already beginning to prepare for their own celebration. So you'll see the items that they have as a part. And all of this is on a mat. I don't want to mess this computer up too much, but it's all on a mat. And the mat even represents the foundation. You asked the question about where is it coming from, Africa? So the mat represents the entire foundation that you can't really, it's just like we say, you can't build a house on a weak foundation. So you have to have a strong foundation. And so I'm believing that all of these symbols came from Dr. Karenga, and that's very deep thinking to look at even the mat that we're talking about and the foundation. So, and he brought in the cup for, this is not his cup. It's similar to the others, but it's represented in part of his display. And I guess when they sing, they have little pieces to sing with, and then he's got a drum in the background as well. There's the drum too. So I might have to stay after Christmas here and join them in their celebrations. This is just my husband and myself in Ohio.
Yeah, you got to come back. Oh, this is so wonderful. Thank you. I see Nivea, you have a question? Maybe? I see Nivea has a hand up. Do you have a question?
She may have.
Sorry, I was having trouble because turning on my mic and my hands are wet. Yes, I had a question about other people celebrating Kwanzaa, because this celebration sounds like it's more about Afro-Caribbean, pride and culture and respect. But how would you see, what is an appropriate way for non-Africans to celebrate Kwanzaa? Would they be offended if we wore African outfits that day? Or is it better that we just witness the African community celebrating? What's best for non-Africans for this day?
Well, see, I still look at just taking the principles for what they are themselves, because in any community, we want unity, right? So, so if you look at the principles, go back and apply it within your own community. And I thought about that. That's why I put the question in, well, can everybody celebrate? And everybody can, but I wouldn't want it to separate and say this is just for African, or this is just for African Americans, because we're still one world, we're one people. So we all would have self-determination in any, it's all personalized. You personalize it for what you want to do to make your world a different place and a better place. When Dr. Karenga did this, as I said, for cooperative economics, he is suggesting that we build our own stores. So I thought about that. I said, well, how does this apply to other cultures? But it does. It's taking responsibility for self, but looking at the greater good and purpose, so I don't see why you couldn't. And can any other thoughts on it? I think others could chime in as well of how it would apply.
Well, I know that in some cultures, like Native Americans, for example, sometimes they are sensitive about people dressing or their garb or acting out parts of their culture because they call that cultural appropriation.
Okay.
So I wouldn't want to offend anybody, but so that's why I was asking what's an appropriate way for us to celebrate.
Right. Now, everything that I read, and like I said, I did try to read up on it myself, everything, and I've never felt that way in the African American community, is that you can't take that from me. You can't use what I use. This is mine. I think looking at just from a universal standpoint, it would be better if we all at least looked at the principles. Now, do you want to have the celebration in your home this way? I don't see anything wrong with it. That's just my personal opinion. Is that because you're re-emphasizing to your family, especially to your children, and you're teaching them this is God's world, and this is how we move about in it. We want peace. We want to live out our purpose. We know that God created us with purpose. So how is it that we remind ourselves, how do we remind our children that you have a valuable purpose here? You have creativity and you're appreciated. So I just don't see how it could not be. And I didn't read anything that says, nope, we don't want anyone taking this from us.
I'm dying to say something about all this. This is so exciting what we're talking about. It's obvious that these are universal principles, right? These apply to all of humanity. On the other hand, there's incredible research about the depth of many layers of African culture. So this is like a complete synthesis of unity in diversity, right? It's oh my goodness, it's a great lesson about African consciousness, you might say, about spiritual and moral matters. So it teaches there's particularity to it, but even that particularity is sort of, you could say, generalized about African experience going way back, maybe millions of years. But the principles are universal and apply to everybody. So, yeah, what you're saying makes sense to me, Regina. It's to be shared and
Yes.
to be appreciated too. So once you share it, you say, well, unity means something different over here. Self-determination means something different over here. But this is an opportunity to learn about the depth of African culture and moral spiritual consciousness, I think, too.
And I think I appreciate you saying what you said, the synthesis of diversity here, because in the United States right now, we're trying to push back on accepting people, accepting gender, accepting people, and closing down on diversity. So how do you do that when you're living by these principles? You have to value your brother. You have to value your sister. You have to look at what other people bring to the table to make everything work together. I used to do presentations on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of the highly effective people. And you have to work together. And you have to have a win-win attitude, you know? So I could go back and look at this and start mixing the two with what Stephen Covey said, which is another universal project that he created with his books, and see how we all must assimilate and work together, synthesize and bring people together. So I may not find that anywhere in a book that I'm looking at, but when I studied this, no, I see this is for everybody. If you want things to be better, if you want this world to be better, and you have to have faith that it can happen. And that's why I like at the end of it, that's the one that he put down is faith. You have to have faith that all of this can come together. Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
would just say
beautifully
that
said.
I like the fact that it's so pragmatic, and it's about, any community could use these principles. And it really depends on us, to come together in whatever community we're in order to make things better. I don't think there's going to be any miracle that's going to come along and just all of a sudden things switch overnight.
Right.
So, I mean, I have a lot of faith in humanity.
Yes.
So I think we can do it, even though we have a long ways to go. And I don't think despair is an option. So hold on to faith and work together. So I like it.
And I think it's good that
Great.
it's not a religious observation, because a lot of people will not participate because it is religious.
I
Yeah,
also,
I mean, I'm a
Yeah,
spiritual
Donna?
humanist.
Wait,
I
hold
don't-
on. I think Donna's been trying to say something for a
okay,
while.
go ahead.
Yes, Donna, your turn.
thanks, Kathy. It just strikes me too, picking up from what Harold said about the universality in the particularity, because it calls to my mind Hanukkah and the lighting of the 7 candles. Sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 9, but the whole observance is an opportunity to teach children that involves family. And I think that it's just basic part of humanity that we have that impulse to do that. And here's just another, a very wonderful example from yet another culture. So it just totally resonates to me as something that's a commonality for all of us.
Yes, in the Baha'i faith also, Abdu'l Baha talks about 7 candles of unity.
There
So
we
it's
go.
interesting that there's so many commonalities in different
Yes.
communities. I wanted to ask Regina, I asked in the chat to elaborate on this concept of Ujamaa. I'm really excited about that principle of cooperative economics, because I only took one course in economics in university. And the first day, the professor said that all of our economic system is based on one fundamental assumption about human nature, that we are greedy. And all the laws and principles of economics are developed on that assumption of human nature. And when you have said here that Ujamaa means cooperative economics, it seems to me that that must be based on a different assumption about human nature. So I wondered if you could elaborate on that and how do we practice cooperative economics?
Well, that I definitely could not speak because of this being done by Dr. Karenga himself. I'm pretty sure those were his words on it. And again, I interpret it because we have been so dependent. I'm talking about African Americans. We're dependent on others. We don't own enough stores. We don't own enough jobs, businesses ourselves. And cooperative means is that if my neighbor has opened up a store, then I should patronize that store. Okay, we should be working in unity to help one another. So to me, it's cooperative in terms of just like a co-op. Okay, is that my brother has a shoe store, my sister has a dress shop, and am I going to go out of my community to get a dress, the same dress, or maybe it's different or whatever? Is keeping some of your business within your community, because
Oh,
we're in the
I see.
minority. So I don't know if that's how I interpret it. Donna. Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting because I heard that in the Jewish community, they very much believe in that same type of principle.
Mhm.
And for example, I heard that newlyweds are often given like money to the new couple is raised within the community to help them to to have a home.
Right.
And I just wondered if every community did that, imagine we wouldn't have homelessness and housing problems. Mhm.
I think just because of time, Regina, do you have anything else final you'd like to share with us? And then I have one more song and I'll do a closing prayer. Is there
No,
anything else you'd like to say?
nothing else on this. I just want to thank everyone for being here, and thank you for the invitation. I made some notes of what we talked about earlier, and we do have a peace and justice group in Fremont, Ohio. I don't know if they are aware of your program. I'm going to tell them about it. I like the idea of the peace train. I'm going to look into that to find out how I can join you on the peace train. Is that done annually?
You know, this was our first time, but several folks said, oh, well, we should do this again, or maybe we should get another group that comes out from like the East. I'll put our website in the chat, and if anyone's interested, so it might be a thing that happens again. So yeah, we'd love to have you. It'd be amazing.
Okay. And then just the idea, going just as a closing statement, this is about peace. This is Dr. Karenga. This is about peace. After the uprising, I'm just trying to interpret, because I did not know that before, that this is why he came up with it. But it's to bring the community back together, to rebuild the community. And again, when you go back and you look at what was going on in the 60s, throughout in the 60s in the US, there wasn't peace. Then we had the Vietnam War. Everybody was protesting a lot of different things. So peace would have been the goal, not just for what happened with the riot, but worldwide peace. So that's my closing statement, is peace. And you had that in your opening, give us a sign of peace. In my church in Fremont that I go to frequently, they do a sign of peace as a greeting to one another. So that should be our word, peace. And know, I heard your prayers, Middle East, peace everywhere if we can get it. And we have to be unified in order to do that. So thank you.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. It was so wonderful having you with us. And I know I just learned so much. So thank you. This was great. Here, I have one final song I'll share. So here, I'm going to replace what you're sharing there, if that's okay.
Okay, yes.
Regina.
Mhm.
So again, if folks just give me a thumbs up so I know that you can.
Okay. Got your shea butter?
Check.
All right. How about your dashiki?
You know it, bro.
And your hotep manual? Did you bring that?
You know what, King?
Oh man.
It's Kwanzaa, what you gon' do? Spending with my family, chill with the crew. We gon' share gifts, you don't have to spend loot. We celebrate culture, our African roots. This Kwanzaa, what you gon' do? Spending with my family, chill with the crew. We gon' share gifts, you don't have to spend loot. We celebrate culture, our African roots. On December 26th, goodbye Saint Nick. I light a black candle, look, ooh, it's lit. First day of Kwanzaa, Umoja means unity. Ain't messing with my clique, melanated, check the drip.
Self-determination is the mantra. Constant elevation like the Haitians when they conquered their colonizers. Like a real-life Wakanda, true believers. Day 2, that's Kuji Chakulia.
Ujima, day 3, responsibility. Let's put in that work together, by the block, clean the streets. Collectively connected like the constellations. Plant a seed, watch it grow, reap what you
Spend your
sow.
black dollars on black business. Your black descendants, they hustle for your black children. A black trillion, that's how much black spending. Ujamaa, economics is how blacks will win, Lord willing.
On the 5th day of Kwanzaa with my family, Nia means purpose, build our legacy. Rest in peace, Rebecca Jones, matriarchy. Continue to work, Fannie Lou Hamer passed to me.
Hey, Kuwumba, yeah, you know what that means. Creativity, and you know what that brings? Full pockets, yeah, you know I like greens. I get paid every time I write things, and my inner light beams.
Day 7, all the candles lit on a Kanara. Imani means faith in a better tomorrow. Joy over sorrow, equity over equal. The kids are our future leaders. We believe in all our people.
Where black women shape the human race. Meet your maker. Queen Mother, we appreciate. You are sacred. You are Harriet. You are Ella Baker. You're a maker. You're a manifester. A creator.
This Kwanzaa, what you gon' do? Spending with my family, chill with the crew. We gon' share gifts, you don't have to spend loot. We celebrate culture, our African roots. This Kwanzaa, what you gon' do? Spending with my family, chill with the crew. We gon' share gifts, you don't have to spend loot. We celebrate culture, our African roots.
Thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you for sharing, Regina. And going forward, let's remember after Christmas that there's also Kwanzaa. Now we can learn from all of this. We can celebrate the 7 principles and learn from our past, all the struggle that we've had before, honor Black folks and minority leaders in the present times, and also look for our future ahead when we might all be unified. So let's take these principles with us and keep learning from one another and grow in unity and peace. Amen.